Good morning to everyone and welcome to the ISGAN Virtual Learning webinar of today, Flexible Operation of Energy Communities under Uncertainty in Energy Markets. Before starting the webinar, let me introduce ISGAN, which hosts this webinar. ISGAN is the short name for the International Smart Grid Action Network, a technology collaboration program of the International Energy Agency. ISGAN is also an initiative of the Clean Energy Ministerial, formally established in 2011. ISGAN creates a strategic platform to support high-level government attention and action for the accelerated development and deployment of smarter and cleaner electricity grids around the world. ISGAN currently consists of 28 contracted parties. Their nominated representative forms the executive committee, headed by the Presidium and assisted by two co-secretariats. ISGAN activity is organized in working groups. Working Group 3, Cost-Benefit Analysis and Toolkit. Working Group 5, Smart Grid International Research Facility Network. Working Group 6, Power Transmission and Distribution Systems. Working Group 7, Smart Grid Transitions. Working Group 9, Flexibility Markets, and the Communication Working Group. ISGAN's vision is to accelerate progress on key aspects of smart grid policy, technology, and investment through the voluntary participation by governments in projects and programs. ISGAN activities focus on 5 principal areas: policy standards and regulation, finance and business models, technology system development, workforce skills and knowledge, users and customers engagement. ISGAN facilitates the dynamic knowledge sharing, technical assistance, peer review, and where appropriate, project coordination among its contracted parties. And the value proposition of ISGAN relies on conferences and workshops, policy and technology briefs, discussions and technical papers, casebooks, and webinars. Within ISGAN, virtual learning offers the ISGAN community means of rational and continuous technical skill update in the field of smart grids. The virtual learning is proposed as a set of e-learning and reading core modules dealing with the entire value chain of smart grids. The webinar of today concerns the flexible operation of energy communities under uncertainty in energy markets. The session will explore innovative methodology for flexibility estimation, asset forecasting, and optimization to enhance the participation of energy communities. Our speakers are Llorenç Burgas Nadal from Universitat de Girona and Albert Solà Vilalta from Universitat Politècnica de Catalunya. Llorenç will demonstrate how this technique can be implemented on platforms like Home Assistant to engage domestic users. Albert will present multi-stage stochastic programming models designed to address challenges posed by uncertain renewable generation and fluctuating energy prices, optimizing energy communities' participation in electricity markets. During the webinar, feel free to use anytime the question and answer tool to pose your questions. The speaker will answer to your question at the end of the presentation. As usual, the webinar recording will be available through the ISGAN YouTube channel. Okay, now I give the floor to Llorenç to start with the technical part of the webinar. Thank you for joining.
My name is Llorenç Burgas, and I will start with this first part of the presentation, speaking about the flexible operation of in energy communities. The agenda of this first part of the webinar, we will introduce first of all the concept of flexibility. Then we will move to our proposal of implementing this flexibility and this modeling on the reality on our Home Assistant. And finally, we will discuss how we can manage the flexibility in communities and how we can find the optimal way of or the optimal flexibility for clients. So let's start with the first part. It's the introduction. Well, first of all, a little bit of context. Historically, we were in a context where generation was very centralized. There were very big generators, and on the other side, we had the consumers. But this context with the current landscape, we with the solar in domestic users is changing a lot. Here now the clients, the classical view of the grid is evolving to a grid where everyone can generate and everyone can produce energy. Also, we have a transformation in the uses. We have new elements. For example, we have electric vehicles. We have also heating. Heating is evolving from fossil fuel to also electricity. Here we have, let's say, the consumers are becoming producers. These actors in the grid are capable of both, are capable of consuming electricity and also produce electricity. And also a very important thing, they are capable of storing electricity with elements like batteries or also the electrical vehicles itself. All these changes have introduced decentralized and bidirectionality energy flows. Here, the electricity can flow to the grid or from the grid, from the perspective of the client. And this is creating new challenges in balancing this grid, is creating also congestions. So we will explore all this. The role of the flexibility here is as the energy grids evolve, the solar and the wind energy are key components on the green energy transaction. But all these generations are weather dependent. You cannot produce energy from the wind if you don't have wind. The same with the sun. If it's night, you cannot produce electricity. This generates problems in the side of balancing the grid, because here we have the peaks of demand. For example, we can have that all the clients want to charge the vehicles at the same time. For example, at 12, when the cheap prices of the electricity are on the grid. The same for cooking or heating. Everyone in each country has more or less the same patterns of behavior. But what is flexibility? How can we define the flexibility itself? The flexibility is the ability of adapting the pattern, the consumption pattern. So it means that the clients can adjust their baseline demand. So here we have some key points. One is the demand adjustment. This means just increasing or decreasing my consumption. I have a flexibility capacity. Capacity means the time I'm able to increase or decrease my flexibility, my power, my consumption from the grid. Also, we have the direction. I can offer positive flexibility and I can offer negative flexibility, meaning I can give more consumption to the grid or less consumption or even production to the grid. More visually, more in a graph, the flexibility is what I have here in green. I have my, if we look for a whole day, we have the baseline consumption. This is my expected consumption or production from the grid. We can see here that some hours I have even production to the grid. The flexibility is the area between my maximum possible consumption and my minimum possible consumption. But here we think that it's very interesting to focus on end user or end consumers. Why is interesting to focusing on consumers? We think it's very, very interesting because now it's who knows better the user patterns is the user itself. So why we have to try to modeling this behavior if we have the ability of just asking to the user. So if we have the ability of asking to the user directly, when will you charge the car, is better than just trying to model when he will charge the car. So here, if we build tools for making this interaction efficient with the client, we will be enabling very wide possibilities of offering flexibility. Here, we have also to talk about the motivation, because we have to remember that flexibility is just a resource. Here, the clients are modifying their electric behavior to adapt and to solve problems in the electricity grid. Of course, for doing these modifications on the patterns, they need some incentives. These incentives can be more economic, can be just a matter of visualization of your own data. There are many ways of engaging the users, but we have to remember that here clients are offering to the grid service, so they need this motivation, they need this incentive. If not, they will not participate. So finally, this introduction part. In this research, we are focusing on development of a set of tools for domestic users. These tools are also capable of dealing in more industrial environments, but our main focus is for domestic users. Here in domestic users is very important when talking about providing user-friendly interfaces, easy to use interfaces, also giving other tools. For example, the ability of controlling the assets each client have. So all these customer-related things. On the other part, we have a more technical, more scientific part of the research that is in how we can model these flexible assets. Also, how we make the optimizations. So we are in the middle of both lines. Okay, now we will move to the flexibility modeling implementation. First of all, we will start with a little bit of introduction of the methodology we are proposing. Here is very important as we are talking about clients and their home. Here, the main problem is that clients do not know that they are flexible. They can offer flexibility. Maybe they have solar production, they can have batteries, they can have many assets that are flexible, but they do not know how to control electrical battery. They do not know how I can offer this flexibility. So here, the first and maybe the most important part is just identify the flexible assets, define controls for these flexible assets, and models. Here, some parts must be done with the interaction with the client. Why? Just a matter because the client knows which car he has. The client knows where is his battery. Doing all this modeling outside without the participation of the final client is not possible. So here we need these tools for asking the user which are his generators, which are his loads. What is this matter here? This is your fridge, is your car. This information is very, very important. So here, the first thing we are proposing to use is Home Assistant. Home Assistant is a very well-known platform that is able to integrate a lot of distinct types of sensors, assets. Here we have a very broad library of integrations. We have integrations with very big protocols. We have integrations for specific fabricants. It's a very interesting tool. Here, even the same clients or we as the investigators, we can define, even if we want, new assets. If some asset is not supported with Home Assistant but has a public API, you can implement this API inside the Home Assistant environment, and you will be able to control using Home Assistant this asset. So here, the first step is just a matter of installing Home Assistant and start integrating all the assets the client has in his house. Once the client has all the assets installed, here we can start off building schedules. Schedules means just a way of knowing how the client wants these assets to be operating. For example, the clients, if they have an electrical way of heating the house, they can put set points on their desired temperature. During night, maybe they want a lower temperature, and during day, a higher temperature. This is just a matter of providing the user the way of defining these patterns. Here, it's highly recommendable to define low patterns of consumption, high pattern, having a variety of patterns and rules of operating these assets. But always, all these assets must be controlled according the user needs, not according other actors' needs. This is very important. The user is the one who needs to know how their assets are operating. The second step is gathering all this information, knowing which assets we have in this home. And here we are developing a module for Home Assistant. This module is currently being developed under the Clima and Gerio project and is under development. It's not still a functional module, but it will be in next year likely. Here, our main goal is just trying to get this information from the user. We want to know which assets are the ones that generate energy. Here, if the client has solar production, this solar production will have an inverter, maybe also a meter. If not, the user needs to install a meter. All this hardware needs to be integrated to the Home Assistant, and then we need to know how to relate these variables we have in order to know how to manage this. Second step we are implementing in this module is the modeling part. For each asset, we need to know the flexibility this asset is providing. Here, some of the modelings are made just with equations. For example, batteries, the modeling can be just with a simple equations on how much they charge. We can model this battery. Other assets, for example, geothermia assets or heating assets, maybe are more complex, especially when we are talking of domestic users, to model them through equations. Here we have the ability of model them through statistical modeling. Here our goal is to build a library where the user will have a set of models. Here the user will say, I have solar production, I have a battery, and I have this model of battery. If this battery is supported with our model, perfect. You have the model already done. If not, here we have some adaptations to the previously created model that must be done for an advanced user or we ourselves. Next step is for non-controllable assets. Non-controllable assets can be non-controllable just because the user do not let us to control them, or because we don't have the ability to control them. If we have a battery installed in a home, it does not mean that we have flexibility for this battery. We have flexibility, we can have flexibility from this battery if we are able to control them. If we are not able to control an asset, this asset is just another production or load. That here what we propose is just forecasting and a statistical modeling of this load or this production, and then with this we can just make the forecasting. Here, how we can obtain the flexibility. The flexibility is just a matter of forecasting all non-controllable assets, model each of the flexible assets, and from the user get these distinct modes of operations. Here, with all this information, we are able to compute the flexibility we have for the next days. It's important to note that here we are considering the distinct modes of operation. We will move to the optimal management in communities. Communities are groups of users that are together in order to benefit, for example, of some communal assets, for example, a public generation or a public battery that is shared among all the community. There are other types of communities, but is not the scope of this presentation, speak about types of communities. Here, what we want to focus is that these communities can offer flexibility. The flexibility a single client or prosumer can offer to the grid is not very big. For example, a domestic user can offer 1 kilowatt, 10 kilowatt maximum, not many more than that. But if we have a community of 100, 300 prosumers, all together can offer a quite big amount of flexibility. Here, for participating with markets, we need the aggregator figure. This aggregator is in charge of participating in the markets of flexibility, contacting with the DCOs, offering these flexible services. The aggregator is the one that needs to communicate with the prosumers. Here, our model will solve these communications. Here, the communications need to include the flexibility, need to include the maximum, the minimum consumption, the profile, the expected profile for tomorrow. Also, here is very important that this information can be given in advance. Also, there are markets where we can have the information that we will have to activate the flexibility. We can have this information in advance in some markets. So if we have this information in advance, it's very interesting for the clients. Why? Because it's not the same having just the information in the moment you have to activate the flexibility. If you have the information just in the model, in the moment you have to activate, for example, in a battery, if you have the battery completely discharged, you can only charge, you cannot discharge the battery. But if you have information in advance, you can previously charge your battery in order to offer all the flexibility this battery have to the grid. So if we have this information in enough time in advance, our flexibility from the assets is maximum. Also, we have the possibility of trying to allocate this charge of the battery where is the best option for the client. The same for the discharge. So it's interesting having this information because enables the possibility of optimizing this flexibility. That's why we propose this second step of optimization. Here, with only the first part we have already seen, we know the flexibility we have. We can offer our services, and we can just know the flexibility we will have. But for knowing the exactly how we can operate in the optimal way our assets, we need an optimization. Here, to perform this optimization, we need a lot of communications and protocols. What we are defining is inside the Home Assistant module. Home Assistant itself gives us the possibility of communicating with many protocols, MQTT, we have also Zigbee, we have Wi-Fi, we have many ways of interacting with distinct assets, batteries, we can interact with sensors itself. But here we need to define the communications, the APIs. Here, what we are planning is to use Open Remote as the aggregator platform and Home Assistant as the domestic users platform. The domestic users will interact with Home Assistant, with the model we are developing. There, the models are being implemented for each of the assets, and these the forecastings, the modelings are made inside the Home Assistant, and then the computation of the flexibility will be sent through an API, an RESTful API to the aggregator. In our view, it will be Open Remote. Also, on the activation step, the aggregator will be the one sending the activation demand to each of the clients. Here, each prosumer will have distinct assets. Depending on the prosumer, will have distinct flexibility patterns. So here is a matter of communications between the aggregator and the clients. So it's just using internet and the protocols there to just communicate between the aggregator and the prosumers. On the other side, the aggregator, here what we are developing inside the RESTful project is a platform that is capable of interacting with DCOs, with flexibility markets, and also is capable of sending these activations. This Open Remote can send directly to the assets or to Home Assistants that are the prosumers. Here, Open Remote has to collect the information from the clients, has to collect the information on the flexibility, the minimum, the maximum possible productions and consumption, minimum and maximum boundaries, and the requirements of the flexibility. Also has to send the activation to the clients in order that Home Assistant can then control the physical assets. So this is the role we are implementing inside this Open Remote. And in summary, our view has some inconvenience, has advantages, and also has some inconvenience. The inconvenience are that clients need to be implicated. You cannot enter to the house of the client, just take the battery he has and operate this in the benefit of a third party. This battery is from the client. If you want to use this battery, this client needs some benefit from it. Here, there is a clear problem on how to control the assets. Here, we are very tight on the fabricants of these assets. If we are not capable of controlling a battery, this battery will not provide flexibility at all. Also, as we have here many clients, we need also VPN for the communications. So all these technical parts must be taken into account. On the other hand, we have many advantages. Now, the one who better knows what will happen tomorrow is the client itself. And here, the clear contributions are that if we focus in clients, we are enabling a very big amount of flexibility. We are not just playing with big actors and just talking about demand response. Here, we want flexibility. Flexibility means clients that act in order to offer their flexibility to the grid. And that's all. If you have questions, we will answer this at the end. From now, I will give the word to Albert.
Yes, we can, Albert.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. So today I'm going to present work on optimal participation of energy communities that Llorenç has already introduced in electricity markets under uncertainty, a multi-stage stochastic programming approach, which is joint work with Marlene Cuadrado, Francisco Javier Heredia, and Ignacio Mañé. So the outline of this talk is to start with an introduction presenting the problem, present the proposed approach, discuss the main model outcomes, discuss the case studies in progress, and present the plans for future work and draw conclusions. So to give some context, I think Llorenç has already talked about energy communities, but I just want to say that it's a new legal figure to encourage active participation of citizens and local entities in the energy transition to net zero. And for example, in Barcelona, where we are located, we have several examples, and one of them is L'Illa Eficient, so translated to English, the efficient island. And it's the group of houses between 4 streets, so 2 parallel streets and 2 orthogonal streets. And what they plan to do is to rehabilitate the buildings, to increase energy efficiency, install solar PV on rooftops to generate their own renewable electricity, to install communal heat pumps, to make progress towards electrification of polluting sectors and increase energy efficiency. And so if you have people that are willing to agree with their neighbors to do all these changes in their regular life, is also more likely that they are willing to make behavioral changes to reduce carbon emissions. And that's also one of the focuses why these energy communities were created by the European Union. So they are broad, they have a big scope, but in this talk we'll focus on electricity. And here's a picture of this energy community. So you can see these 4 streets, and it's this building here in the middle. And the plans for rehabilitating the buildings are highlighted in green. And if you look close, you can see some solar panels scattered around the rooftop. So some are here, and all around the rooftop. So that's this particular energy community, which it includes already quite a lot of people, because this is a city with a lot of people living in buildings. So what do we plan to do? So the research question we are trying to ask is the following. how should an energy community optimally satisfy its electricity needs and make the most of surpluses in wholesale electricity markets? So we have an energy community that essentially consists of some electricity demand. They might have some renewable generation installed, some solar PV panels, and if they are in rural areas, they might also have some wind farms. They might have also energy storage systems like batteries. And what we want to study is how this whole collective should participate in electricity markets. And we consider the following electricity markets: so the day-ahead market, reserve, intraday, and finally, we also take into account the imbalances that are the costs or benefits done after real time to acknowledge whether the energy community or the market participant has satisfied the commitments they had achieved. So they are able to produce the energy they promised to produce or consume the energy they promised to consume. So how are markets structured in the Western Wall or in the places where electricity is liberalized? Typically, there is some space for future markets or forward markets in this picture, but it's something we do not consider. So parties can make agreements way ahead of real time, so years, months, or weeks ahead. We forget about those for now, and we focus on the day-ahead market, which is the plan. At 12 today, the day-ahead market for tomorrow is cleared, so makes the plan for every hour of the day and to see who is going to produce and who is going to consume electricity. Excuse me. Then in Spain, at least, the reserve is cleared just after day ahead. So when the results of day ahead are known, the reserve market is clear, which pays people to be available to react at a short time instruction from the system operator. So if the system operator sees that there is potential trouble or there is trouble already, it might call these parties to respond quickly and adjust their generation to match the needs of the system. As we get closer to real time, there are a bunch of intraday electricity markets that help market participants adjust their positions. So for instance, if I'm a wind producer and the wind is lower than expected, I could buy electricity from these intraday markets to adjust my position. And finally, in Spain, there are 7, and they keep happening as we get closer to real time. And yet, finally, the balance computations that would be towards the end. So this is the problem the market participation. And if we want to make decisions on how to participate in these markets, we're affected by 2 types of uncertainty. First, electricity market prices. So as we have to send our bid or participation to electricity markets, we do not know the price of electricity, and this happens in all the markets. It happens in day ahead, reserve, and intraday, and it is also true for the imbalances computations. And secondly, there is uncertainty inherent to the energy community because it has variable renewable energy sources like solar and wind. And here we can see a summary of all the uncertainties we are considering. So electricity prices, today ahead, reserve, and intraday, renewable generation from wind and solar, and finally the imbalance prices. That they are distributions, so they have certain probability, and we can plot the median, some quantiles, the maximum, the minimum, as we can see here for wind and day ahead electricity prices. Another important part is that this problem has a complex time structure because different decisions need to be made at different times. So the first decision to be made is the position at day ahead. Then when that's cleared, we know more information. We know the price and our position at day ahead. And then we have to decide on the decision on the reserve market. And as we get closer to real time, we have to decide our positions to the intraday electricity markets and so on. So different decisions are made at different times, and also different random variables are observed at different times. So the day-ahead market price is known before the reserve market price, and so on. And so that's something we want to capture, this different times at which both decisions need to be made and uncertainties are observed. So to address this problem, we propose multi-stage stochastic programming models to maximize the expected social welfare of the energy community in one day. So we focus on in one day, and we consider the 24 hours of that day. The model stochasticity allows to capture electricity price and variable renewable uncertainty. And here, to be able to fit it into an optimization model, we assume that all random variables are assumed to are discrete. This means that we are going to have a bunch of scenarios for every random variable with some probability, and these will be the only possibilities that can happen. Something in between the scenarios will not be possible. So, for instance, the electricity price could be 20, 25, or 30. It could not be 27. That's the random variables are assumed to be discrete. And secondly, the multi-stage aspect allows to capture the different times at which decisions are made and random variables are observed. So every stage is composed by a decision, which needs to be made before a certain random variable is observed. And then we will move to the next stage where there is a new decision to be made and there will be a new random variable observation. And we have a batch of those. How can we include this complex time structure into an optimization model? This is done through the scenario trees that have several stages, and at every stage, how the scenarios are constructed, as we can see in this picture. And here we can see scenario trees that we consider. And this is an example generated with the forward tree construction algorithm. And here's an example generated with the dynamic tree generation with flexible bushness. And in summary, the problem we were trying to solve is the following. We want to maximize the expected energies community social welfare, which we define as the expected market incomes minus the expected market cost, subject to the feasible behavior of the energy community assets. And this includes the feasible behavior of the battery. Well, the solar and wind do not, they generate what the scenarios give us, and also the satisfying the demand and making sure that the demand, which has some flexibility, stays within limits. Excuse me. We also need to ensure that the market rules are satisfied, that the system imbalances are small, and we penalize them with high cost. And finally, the non-anticipativity constraints that allow to fit the scenario tree structure into the optimization model. In the typical instances we are considering, we have a mixed integer linear programming problem with 10 to the 5 decision variables, 10 to the 4 of which are binaries, and around 1 million constraints. And now let's analyze what we get from the model. We get 3 main outcomes. First, optimal price quantity bits that can be buying, selling, or combined to day-ahead market. We can get potentially also probability distribution across the scenarios of reserve and intraday electricity market price quantity bits. So the same that we get for day-ahead, but for reserve and intraday markets. We might get them or not. We are discussing whether we are analyzing in one of the case studies whether it's worth considering them or it's okay to just simplify it and just obtain price quantity bits for the day-ahead market. More on it later. And secondly, or thirdly, the optimal actions of all elements of the energy community to honor the bits and satisfy the energy community's electricity demand. And these optimal actions, of course, they are dependent on the scenario. So they are optimal actions with some probability across the scenarios. Let's talk about the first outcome, electricity market bits. What is an electricity market bits? It's just a pair of prices and quantities, or it's a group of pairs of prices and quantities that represent that at that price, the energy community is willing to buy or sell a certain amount of electricity. The energy communities would send these bits to markets, but not only them, all market participants send them. Both, they can be buying or selling. And then the market operator, when it receives all the bids, it determines the quantities exchanged by every market participant and the market clearing price. So if we represent the bid in a plot, we have here an example of a selling bid. So the bid is represented just by the green dots, pairs of energy quantities and electricity market prices that then are joined with the blue lines to show a typical representation. So if we look, for instance, at this point here, the second point from the left, we have that if the price is around 110, the energy community is willing to sell, in this case, just under 5 units of electricity. If the price gets higher than to 120, then the energy community is willing to sell more than 6 units of electricity, and so on. We can also get buying bids. So in cases where the energy community doesn't have enough electricity to satisfy its demand, then it could need to buy electricity from the markets. And here we have that as the price gets higher, the quantities to be bought get lower and lower. And something interesting that we are starting to see now in our model are cases where the energy community would like to submit both buying and selling bids. So here, positive quantities represent selling electricity and negative quantities represent buying electricity. And we observe that if the price is very low or relatively low, it's 65, then the energy community is willing to buy electricity. But if the price gets at 71 or above, the energy community is willing to sell electricity. And this is something that we are particularly interested in capturing, because it's not many market participants have this dual behavior where sometimes they would like to buy and sometimes they would like to sell, or even in one time period, if the price is high enough, we would like to buy, we would like to sell, and if it's low enough, we would like to buy. So that's something that we are particularly interested in classifying, observing, studying. And we get these bids that they can be buying, selling, or combine at every time step, so for every hour of the day. And secondly, the behavior of all the energy community elements. So we had demand, solar PV, wind, and battery. Here, solar PV and wind are not controllable, so we'll focus on the flexible demand and the battery. And this takes into account the stages at which decisions need to be made through the non-anticipativity constraints, as mentioned in the model summary. So we make sure that we make every decision on the behavior of every asset, taking into account the information that's known at the time that that decision needs to be made. And for instance, here we can observe the state of charge of the battery in percentual terms. And here, the behavior of the flexible demand in megawatt hours. And finally, a summary of all that's happening at the energy community when the energy community is submitting bids to all the markets. So in greens and blues, we have the behavior of assets. So for instance, in this dark green, we have the flexible demand. In this blue, we have the wind generation. In this green, light green, the solar production. And then the market participants, they head in this dark red. So this is selling. When there are black crosses, it's buying. And we can see when, for instance, here that the wind generation is not enough to meet the demand, then we buy. But when we have an excess of variable renewable generation, mostly from solar, the energy community is willing to sell. Similar for intraday markets. And finally, we can see the balance of the energy community with this black line that goes through for every hour. This is for one particular scenario on day 7, and for another scenario on day 7, where we can see, for instance, that the solar generation is different. The energy community gets balanced in this way, and so on. Okay. So moving on the case studies. The aim of the case studies is to analyze several aspects of energy communities' behavior in electricity markets. And we have been working or plan to work on 3 main case studies. First of all, a case study analyzing bit curves and the scenario tree size. Second, a complete case study for a year. And thirdly, a case study on energy community regulation, which is currently more part of future work, where we've been focusing on the first two. And they will show the model capabilities and analyze several aspects of energy communities' behavior in markets. What's the aim of this case study? To explore the trade-off between the case study on bit curves and a scenario tree size. Excuse me. Here we want to explore the trade-off between bits resolution. How detailed do we want to be in bits? We mentioned earlier that we want to consider bits today ahead in detail, but we might consider bits in detail to reserve and or intraday electricity markets. So here's how much do we need to get into detail, and the other part is analyzing the scenario tree size. The bigger we make the scenario tree, the better the better detail we can capture the uncertainty. But of course, if we make it too big, there's the risk that we are not able to solve the problem on time. So here, the computational time is the other measure that we make to make sure that, okay, we don't make a problem too big that it's not possible to solve it in reasonable time. So modeling, starting with the first item, bit detail. Modeling a bit in detail requires many decision variables. In this problem, prices are parameters and energy quantities are decision variables. So adding the need to model a bit in details requires many decision variables. So if we were to do this for all electricity markets, we would need to build these curves for every scenario previous to the stage where this market is cleared, increasing exponentially the number of decision variables that we need. So maybe modeling all bits in detail is too ambitious. And we want to explore the model capabilities in this direction. So for which markets beyond day ahead, of course, we want to build the bit. We can build bits while ensuring enough precision. And for this study, we've set the MIP gap to 1% in reasonable computational time. So we don't want the model to spend more than about an hour. And secondly, how much do we lose if we do not model bits to markets beyond day ahead in detail? So is it okay to actually just consider bits to day ahead? And here we have the case study with two scenario sizes. One's with, we've considered it for a month, and the scenario sizes with about 180 scenarios and about 250 scenarios. And we report the computational time for the small scenarios on this first column. If we just model day ahead bits, it takes 173 seconds. And if we model day ahead and reserve bits, it takes 187 seconds. So here we don't see a significant increase in computational time. But as we move to larger scenario trees, we observe that the time to solve the problem increases from about just under 1,200 seconds to just under 1,500 seconds. So here the increase becomes to be significant. And if we were to increase further the scenario tree size, the changes seem, one would think that they will increase even farther. So as expected, if we want to model day ahead and reserve bit in detail, it's more costly, but it is still within the 1 hour limit, at least for the scenario tree sizes considered. And so to analyze solution quality, we want to see whether the first thing to look at would be the objective function value, which represents the maximized expected social welfare of the energy community. And we expect it to be greater when considering more detail in markets. So here's what we report for the same instances for 1 month. I think it was in June 2023. We report the objective function for modeling bits in day ahead only, and modeling bits in day ahead and reserve in detail. So for the small scenarios, we've observed significant gains from modeling bits in detail up to 12%. But as the scenarios get larger, we observe that the gains are not as significant, reducing to 1.6%. So as a summary, as expected, in all cases, there are gains. We're considering bit details in detail for day ahead and reserve market, but they might be small. A caveat is that maybe the metric we are using to measure how good the results are is not enough, or it's a good indicator, but we would like to see all other metrics. So if there are any ideas, we've thought on doing some simulations, but we haven't carried them out yet. But yeah, it would be interesting in ideas in this direction as well. The second case study, a complete case study for a year. And the idea is just to analyze the use of the proposed approach in realistic conditions. So this includes identifying suitable data sources to generate the scenario trees. Remember that we need market data and renewable generation data, and also demand data. Generate these scenario trees and solve the optimization problem in realistic time. So under 2 hours, I would say 1-2 hours, and consider a few years to obtain meaningful results as well. And we use or plan to use the following data sets for electricity market prices. We use OMIE, which is the Spanish market operator, which publishes electricity prices on an hourly resolution for every day. And I think this is quite common for most market operators in other areas. For solar and wind regeneration, we use Renewable Ninja, which can provide hourly solar and wind generation around the globe. So this is also a great data set to use. And for demand data, we're exploring the use of DataDis, which is an association of distribution system operators in Spain, that they provide data on aggregated level at hourly resolution. So we are checking whether we can get access to that or not. And finally, the future work would be to conduct a case study on energy community regulation. The idea is to analyze existing and potential regulatory frameworks for energy communities and how they impact the energy community behavior and economic sustainability using the full power of the model we've developed. We have identified the following interesting points to consider in the case studies. Minimum bid size, allowing joint buying and selling bids, which is something we've already observed in the model. The discussion on whether there should be fixed and dynamic coefficients in energy communities, which is a way to share the benefits of being part of the energy community by its members. The distribution of energy within the energy community and social welfare, the active demand response market, and comparing pay-as-bid versus pay-as-clear markets. And finally, to draw some conclusions, we have presented a multi-stage stochastic programming model to analyze the optimal participation of energy communities in wholesale electricity markets. We have analyzed the stochastics outputs of the model, in particular, how the market bids are built. We have observed simultaneous buying and selling bids, a novel characteristic of this model. We have presented 2 case studies on the comprehensive behavior of energy communities, from which we should see a publication coming towards the end of this year. And we have presented future work plans on case studies analyzing energy community regulations. Thank you very much for your attention. And if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them together with the question session for Llorenç. And here you can see some of the references.
Thank you very much, Albert, for your presentation. Thank you also to Llorenç for presenting the part regarding the home assist integration. Yes, we are already a bit over time, so let's start the question and answer session. We already have some questions in the chat, and I will start with a question to Llorenç. The audience is raising the concern regarding interoperability. How can you solve the interoperability if you have the interoperability issue, and how can you solve it in the case you have devices of different manufacturers, and also they change across different domestic users?
It's a very interesting question, because here, when talking about distinct batteries, for example. Each distinct batteries has distinct software, distinct ways of operating. Yes, all the batteries will have the normal operation mode that will be, usually they call it the solar mode, but this mode is an automatic mode that operates on a fixed schedule, that if there is surpluses, the battery charges. If not, the battery discharges. If you only have this operational mode in the battery, you have not, you will not have any flexibility from this battery. For having flexibility, you need the ability to physically control this battery. And here you can find batteries where you have an API to access there and control maybe some parameters, or you have black boxes there and you have absolutely nothing to do with this battery. So here there are a lot of research, a lot of laws that need to change in order to enable all this flexibility we already have in our homes.
Okay, thank you very much. And I will jump to Albert now. There is a question regarding managing rebidding. So how are considering the rebidding strategies for non-cooperative agents in the model that you described?
Maybe I'll need some clarification on the question. So I guess for non-cooperative agents, it is meant that the members of the energy community decide not to cooperate. Is that the case? If that's the case, we are, in short, we are assuming that they are willing to cooperate. If they are not willing to cooperate, they are not part of the energy community, or non-cooperative behavior is not allowed within the energy community for now. I'm not sure I asked the question. And regarding rebidding, you have to submit the bid 2 days ahead. So that's assumed to be a unique bid for the energy community. And then there's the rebidding process for the coming markets, for reserve, for intraday, and so on.
Okay, so there is a John adds more detail on his comment regarding non-cooperative, meaning so bidding to maximizing personal benefit. Is this the case of the model of the modeling that you considered?
So that's something that we have on the pipeline for greater future work. So for now, as I said, this model just considers that the members are willing to cooperate, and then we want to then analyze how you can distribute the wealth you've obtained from cooperation between the members. And in this study, then you can fit in the part of saying, well, what if someone decides to go on their own and not cooperate, and then maybe instead of having one energy community, you have a few separate aggregations, and how that plays. But that's, for now, it's not part of the study. It could be part of a future study.
Thank you very much, Albert. Now, for Llorenç, there is a question regarding the typology of consumers, of clients that you considered. So the question is, who is your client? I guess in terms of typology, because citizens usually do not have the technical knowledge to provide the information like the one that is required by the platform that you presented. And so if you please clarify on this. And then it is suggested a tool as a free energy community simulation tool that is suggested by Anna, and whether you use it or well, if you used some other tools if you wish to share with us this.
For me, when I talk about client, is the final domestic user, is the particular user. And yes, usually these particular users do not have the knowledge in order to make all these modelings we are talking in research. So here the main research is how do we build these tools for the users. Here we need simple to use, as much as plug and play solutions as possible. If not, we will not have prosumers in our grids. If we want prosumers, we need to build tools for the prosumers. If we just omit the clients from the grid, we will stay in a pattern where we have big companies that are big producers. We will have big companies that are offering flexibility. And for me, it's maybe a particular opinion, this is the same pattern we have nowadays. Is a demand response. The clients are just there in the middle of big companies, just paying the bills. And if the bill is too expensive, I will try to reduce my consumption. This is the classical pattern. Here we are talking about the flexibility. Flexibility for me means that the final users of the electricity, the clients, the domestic users, needs to play a role in the grid.
Thank you, Llorenç. Question to both of you that I think that applies to the platform presented by Llorenç and the model presented by Albert is about how the limits of flexibility, well, the grid constraints are accounted considering the units that provide the flexibility. So does the aggregator or the model considers no network information when aggregating flexibility, and how potential grid constraints violation is handled? So please, Llorenç, and then Albert, if you can please elaborate on this.
I can start. In our tool, the tool we are developing, we want to model each flexible asset apart. So for each flexible asset, the client can provide the patterns he wants. The user, the domestic user, is the one saying, I want my dining room at 28 degrees, or you can play from 29 to 25. This is my desire. Inside this, you can do whatever you want. The same for the battery. This is my battery. You can do whatever you want with my battery, or you can only charge or discharge during these 2 hours, because the other hours the electricity is very expensive. I want this battery to be operating for me. The same for the car. I have a car. I want minimum percentage for tomorrow of the battery of 30%. So this is very complex to know. To build all this software is where we are trying to solve all the technical problems mainly.
Yeah, so I think Llorenç has finished answering. So our model doesn't take into account any network constraints or any network behavior, mostly because we are assuming that we are in an electricity market, in a zonal electricity market. So the price is the same for everyone in the zone. And then if the system operator needs flexibility in an area, then it calls people in that area to provide flexibility. So we just model flexibility without any network constraints, because the person that operates doesn't see, at least in markets where there is zonal pricing.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's make the last two questions. So let's start with Albert. Regarding the how do you model the electricity bids in your model? So how you can consider like conditional flexibility in which the users may or not be available to provide flexibility that was otherwise accounted. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, so we do not consider any flexibility availability. What we do is an approximation of the flexibility. So we have a central estimate of what the demand will be, and then we allow some movement across this demand to model flexibility. So we have some band that we say, okay, so the demand has to be within this. So we are talking about flexible demand. The battery is fully manageable according to what the optimization guides us. So there's flexibility there. But for flexible demand, we model it. I'm not sure. Maybe could you clarify, Matteo, if the question is about flexibility for demand or flexibility in general?
Could be both. Yeah, could be demand and dual generation, because the question mentioned vehicle to grid. So, well, you can clarify both.
Right. Okay. So flexibility in this case is just modeled through the participation in the reserve market. So general flexibility, any kind of flexibility, the total flexibility the energy community can provide is managed through the reserve bid. And then if the energy community commits to doing a bid, then to reserve, we ensure that at least for 1 hour, that bid needs to be, the assets need to be able to feasibly satisfy that reserve commitment. So for instance, there needs to be enough energy in the battery, there needs to be enough power to discharge or charge, depending on the direction of the flexibility bid offered, and so on. So the energy community has to be able to provide that flexibility so that it books capacity that otherwise could be sold, bought, or used to satisfy the internal demand of the energy community. And then if we talk specifically about the flexible demand, the way we've modeled is we have, as I was saying earlier, we have a central estimate of what the demand would be, and then we allow movement within a band. So for instance, if an hour the estimate of demand is 10, then we allow it to move it between 11 and 9 or whatever parameter we want to fit. But then we also ask for the flexible demand during the day to be the same as the central estimate, to avoid being always in the lower end, because otherwise it'd be pushed towards the lower end. So we ensure that we satisfy all the demand by saying, well, on aggregated during the day, you have to consume this amount of electricity. And this model saying, okay, maybe I want to put the dishwasher now, but instead of that, if I do it later, but during that day, I have to put the dishwasher. Hope I have answered the questions. Otherwise, I'm happy to follow up.
Yeah, thank you very much. And Llorenç, one question regarding the integration of the tool that you presented. I mean, if it can be integrated potentially within district energy community management systems, and like receive and send information through maybe system operators platforms.
Home Assistant is a tool that is useful for clients, because all the connections you have there are made with Wi-Fi, Zigbee, that are do not have many range. If you want to be in a bigger scenario, you need open remote for aggregators, for all other actors in the grid. Home Assistant is maybe not the best solution.
Okay, thank you very much, Llorenç, and well, thank you, Llorenç and Albert, for sharing with us the findings of your work, of your research regarding the flexible operation of energy communities and how the energy community potential in terms of flexibility can be exploited participating in energy markets. I thank